Okay, awesome. So we are back in the studio. All right. Okay, so we're back in the studio. And for our Radio K listeners, do you want to say hi? Do you want to say who you are? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi,
Great, cool,
my name's Gabe. Gabe
nice,
Barnett.
wonderful. And so today you were performing solo. You were playing a very lovely pared down acoustic set. Usually you are performing with a band, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And full name.
Gabe Barnett and the Rounders.
How did you come up with that?
Well, it was a solo singer-songwriter, folk singer project for a long time, and a band kind of organically formed behind me. And for a while, it was called the Big House Jug Band, and we were all
Whoa.
like very acoustic. And we lived in a collective house all together, most of us did, called the Big House. And so the Big House Jug Band. And then we didn't want to be pigeonholed by like a genre, and so we wanted to ditch Jug Band. And Rounders is a colloquialism, an old like English colloquialism, but used by a lot of like old blues singers from the early 20th century. And it means basically a drunkard, one who makes the rounds
Oh,
of the
okay,
bars.
nice.
And I live in Northeast Minneapolis, where there's a bar on every corner, and
Right.
especially back then, the Rounders were making the rounds.
The Rounders are making the rounds.
Yeah. So,
Okay, that's such a fun backstory. And so today you were working with a solo set. And is the stuff that you perform today stuff that is your own project that you're kind of keeping separate, or is this the acoustic version of Rounders material?
it's acoustic version of songs that the whole band plays on. Like I don't really make too much of a distinction. I can play anywhere solo, and sometimes we have the full like 8 to 10 piece band really, and sometimes we'll play as like a quartet or a trio, and there's just kind of a lot of moving pieces, and depending on the stage and the audience and the mood, like we'll pare down or ramp up. But yeah, our standard band right now, there's 8 of us.
That's a lot of rounds.
Yeah.
Have you ever played any like weird instruments? Because you just said like, oh, I can play anywhere, like by myself. Has that ever like caused you to be in a situation where suddenly you're in like a small bar and like playing like the spoons or like a banjo or something?
I've played a decent amount of washboard back in the day, and instead of a drummer back when we were doing acoustic music, we had washboard player.
Bring
and there's
back the
definitely
washboard.
yeah, in our folkier days, there was definitely a lot of just like weird, mandolas and spoons and wash tub basses and washboards and things like that.
That's really cool. Do you think you'd ever return to that sound, or are those days over?
I think maybe for fun, as kind of a novelty, as like a one-off, it'd be cool to do like a jug band set, but I don't know. I'm not super interested in like going back. I imagine like more acoustic, kind of roots, country tinged music in my future, but not like to the degree where there would be like washed up bass and washboard and things like that.
Right. So you're at an acoustic kind of space in your career now. How did you initially get into music? Because it sounds like you maybe weren't starting as like predominantly acoustic as you are now. So what was kind of that entrance point?
Well, now we're pretty electric. I mean, it's like
okay.
electric guitars and a horn section and electric piano and like synthesizer and things like that. But there's been like kind of a roundabout journey. Like I played in punk bands as a teenager, and then when I struggled to put another punk band together, I started playing solo acoustic, and then this band formed behind me and also was playing acoustic instruments, kind of old-timey instruments. And then that has evolved as we've wanted to escape from kind of being pigeonholed, and we were stuck playing with bluegrass bands all the time. And I'm not a huge fan of bluegrass. I like a lot of like old-time folk music, but don't necessarily want to play every show with bluegrass bands all the time. And as we've evolved to kind of modernizing our sound and playing more electric, we've stepped away from those like acoustic tones, I guess.
So who were some of the first artists who really made you kind of like fall in love with music? Because it sounds like you entered in like a punk era. So like, who are some of like your first loves for music, and who are some more recent loves that you feel like have really kind of showed your also own sonic journey a little bit?
Like as a teenage punk rocker, I got, like really into at first, the bands that were more accessible, like Green Day. And then wanted to know where they came from and got into bands like Rancid and Bad Religion, and then wanted to know who influenced them. And then you're listening to the Ramones and the Clash.
Right.
From there, and then who influenced them? And it's like, well, Lou Reed and Bob Dylan. And then who influenced them? And you're listening to Delta blues singers from the 1920s. And then have then followed that forward, and it's like, well, what came out of those Delta blues singers, and like you kind of go back into it. And now I'm at a point where, like, honestly, I listen to a lot of just like pop music. I've been on this kick this year where it's like all Harry Styles and Taylor Swift and Post Malone.
Oh my gosh. If you could meet any current pop star right now and just sort of like sit down and talk with them and pick their brain, who would you want to chit chat with?
I'd probably chat with Taylor Swift.
We talk with T Swift.
Yeah.
T Swizzle.
Yeah, she's kind of in command of what she's doing, and she, I think is a really talented songwriter and is like versatile and interesting, and I don't know, I to be at that level of like pop stardom, but still seem to have like so much control. Like to have seized control from like the labels and stuff, I think is a really interesting aspect of who she is. And yeah,
it's been very interesting to grow up with her as an artist that I feel like has always been relevant.
Right.
During just like watching that over the ages. Would you consider yourself a Swiftie?
I wouldn't go that far, but I enjoy her music, and I'd pick her brain if I had to pick a pop star of the modern world.
A pop star, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, she's doing some really cool stuff. So your electric influences, when did those begin? When did you kind of start dipping your toe into that?
Yeah, like I said, I had played in punk bands, but then it became like this folk acoustic thing, and in some ways it was just like, my taste in music wasn't like stuck in like one specific genre, and it was like I listened to electronica and hip hop and pop music and rock and roll of every variety, and just started like diving back into that as we were making purposeful steps to separate ourselves from the like kind of folk music and bluegrass scenes, and like kind of more modernish artists that have really captured my attention would be like The War on Drugs and Rihanna. Are like, that's probably as far as like some of the stuff I've tried to capture in like my sonically and songwriting wise with what I've been trying to do in more recent years. I think that those are two artists I would say have, kind of, opposite ends of a spectrum depending on how you view music. But yeah, The War on Drugs and Rihanna are
super interesting. So now this is making me think about it, because I'm just so curious about all these different artists that you're kind of bringing up. Is there any genres that you feel like you have left to kind of explore or that are making you curious, or do you think you're just going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the ones that you're currently interested in?
I think like ultimately the common thread in my band is jazz. And like I'm a big jazz head, but I'm not like a great guitar player, and I would love to be able to lead my band as, I mean, we already do kind of like scale back and ramp up depending on the room and the audience and stuff like that, but to really be able to do like almost like a jazz crooner set, which I feel like we've touched on at different points, but to like have my guitar playing chops at a place where I felt like I was like leading a jazz band more than like a pop band would be great.
What does your perfect concert look like? In which you are on stage? Like, what's the venue? What's the crowd? What's the vibe?
Yeah, I guess ideally, like the First Ave main room with the floor crowded, people excited to be there, singing along, and us playing probably a more, amplified rock and roll synthesizers, big drum beats set where it's just anthemic and epic, and everybody's dancing and moving and singing along that would be my pinnacle. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. What did you want to be when you were little?
A cowboy.
That's so fun. Yeah, do you think that maybe influenced some of the music you've been drawn to?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, you didn't even hesitate.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even ask
I'm
the
still little
question.
and I still want to be a cowboy.
You still want to be a cowboy?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think you're ever going to pursue your cowboy dreams?
I mean, I've punched a little cattle from time to time.
Right, naturally. You've been on a horse.
Yeah, I worked on a farm all through high school, moving cattle from field to field. And yeah, I'd love to find myself, some horses and some land. And,
right, you're like in Wyoming somewhere.
Yeah.
Moving.
You get it.
That's so funny. So when it comes to you being the leader of your band, are you also the lead lyricist? Are you the one who's like writing the lyrics to all of the songs?
It is essentially, I guess, like a singer-songwriter project with a backing band.
Okay.
And I come to the band with pretty fully formed like chord progressions and lyrics and vocal melodies, and then for the most part they come up with their parts that kind of fit within that structure, and it's kind of change the structure as we're working on it together, and everybody's got their different ideas of what they're hearing and stuff, but it's the core of the songs are mine.
Right. Are there any lyrics that you've been especially proud of or attached to?
I guess on our last EP, the Easy EP, we have a song called Rental Agreement, and it's a jazz song, essentially, like kind of a free jazz punk thing, and there's only one lyric, and it's maybe this'll keep the landlord from raising the rent, and it's the only line in the whole song, and I repeat it a few times, and then it's mostly instrumental, and I think it's effective, and I stand by it. Like, let's do what we can to keep the landlords from raising the rent.
Right. I think I've heard that song of your guys' actually. I think I listened to your EP. I like that one.
Oh, thanks.
It was really fun. Oh yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, thinking through all of this, connecting dots. So those are lyrics you've felt especially proud of, and so in terms of the collaborative process, you are usually working. You're bringing your stuff, you're bringing your material, your thoughts, your ideas, dreams, to the band, and then the band's kind of doing what they will with them. Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. Do you guys ever? So because you mentioned that jazz was a pretty heavy like influence that you guys consistently kind of stick to, or rotate around. Is that something then where you're ever playing like a live session and people are kind of like freestyling, or is it usually a bit more like structured jazz?
No, we definitely have, played shows where we feel a little bit more free to do extended jams on the instrumental breaks and stuff, and I think we've got some stuff this winter. That's the approach I think we're going to take with it, is where it is kind of a looser night where we can, we'll make sure all the vocal verses happen, but the instrumental breaks in between or at the end or at the beginning, we're just going to take turns taking solos and see what happens, and, I don't know, jam, you know?
Do you feel comfortable with musical solos?
I don't play a lot of lead. I'm a rhythm guitar player and a singer and a songwriter, a lyricist, and I surround myself with what are, in my opinion, the greatest musicians in town right now, so that I can bang out these basic chord progressions and let them, shine on those, and they play leads and they play solos, and it's I have a electric guitar player, lead guitar player who just shreds, and saxophone and trumpet player that they both just shred, and a piano player that shreds, and another keyboard player who joined us recently and is playing like organ and synth stuff, and she shreds, and our drummer crushes it, and our bass player crushes it, and the two of them, our rhythm section, keeps us all in line, so it remains musical as we, as they take their turns shredding, and I try and make songs.
So you guys are all kind of working together.
Mm-hmm.
And so were the 8 of you then all working together on the Easy EP?
There was a 5 or 6 piece version of the band that made the Easy EP. We'd done a full length right before we recorded that. That was a 7-piece version of the band, and that was like this really, really drawn out process. It took us 2 years to make that record, and I think we were all a little burnt out. And the Easy EP, we were just like, let's go in and bang this out like 90% live, and just like play these songs to be done with it. And we just went in as a 5-piece, and I mean, it was like 1 or 2 takes on each song, and
wow.
just there's a little bit of overdubbing and some cleaning stuff up in the mixing process afterwards, but it was just essentially like, we know how to play together and we know these songs. Let's just go in and bang this out.
Yeah, that's a really good mentality to have. Where were you in your life? Kind of like what was inspiring you? What was in your life right before you kind of started that journey of the Easy EP?
It's a place I find myself in a lot where, I think I seek out personal evolution and growth. And I think sometimes usually because that's how the material world works, there are circumstances outside of my control that are always like forcing change to happen. And, things like breakups and shifts in finance and economy and the season change, and all of it is kind of where I find my inspiration. And I think a lot of the songs on the Easy EP came, I think 3 of them came out of either the end of a relationship or the beginning of a new relationship, and then another song about being frustrated by landlords in a rapidly gentrifying city.
Right. What era of your personal evolution do you find yourself in now?
I think it's hard to say because I think I'm sort of at the beginning of a new cycle.
Okay. A new cycle of change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the next year, 2 or 3 holds for me, because I do feel like I kind of I've come to recognize the patterns and cycles in my life, and they're not always the same, and I'm definitely not a fortune teller. I don't know what's coming down the pipeline, but I have felt very aware that one cycle is tapering off and another one is beginning, and I'm curious to see where that leads me. I hope somewhere good.
Do you have any specific hopes for what this next cycle will contain?
I'm going to put a lot of energy into music and the band. We're going to record a new record this winter.
Oh, that's so exciting.
And I think with that, I'd love to see us playing a lot of stages where all 8 of us can fit comfortably in front of audiences that are there to hear and enjoy the nuances in the music the band makes and the poetry and the lyrics I sing. And I think personally, I'm looking for love. No, I'm
Looking
not
for
looking
love.
nothing.
Yeah, Radio K listeners. If you're out there and also looking for love. Is there anything that you're hoping to kind of like leave behind in this old cycle?
I think I'm always, especially as an artist, trying to shake off like hard line parameters, like genre definitions, things like that. And I feel like this last chapter, we were very much this sort of, heavily jazz influenced bar rock band that felt like, I got told a lot like a jazzier Springsteen or a mix between Sinatra and Springsteen or like kind of thing. And it's like, and I've heard that enough now where I want to like throw that in the trash and build something new. So I think, yeah, shaking off old definitions and parameters and letting new growth blossom.
That'll be super exciting. If you were like a little video game character, if you had a little like Gabe Barnett starter pack, what would be in it?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. It's like I said, I'm at the beginning of a new cycle, I think, and I don't know what, what's in my Zelda satchel.
Zelda Satchel is still forming. Zelda Satchel is on the way. Yeah. That's all right. And then a question I always love to ask all the artists who come on are, what are 3 things you're really loving right now?
I guess I love books. I love long distance running. I love music.
Huge. All of those things. Wonderful. And then you said you're recording an album this winter.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea of when that is going to be coming out?
I just was meeting with some engineers and checking out some studios, and I think we've selected who we're going to work with, and I believe we'll begin tracking in February.
Cool.
And
okay.
I'd love to have like an end date in mind, but I know at this stage I've made enough records where like that's a good way to, I don't know, somehow like dig a hole and trap yourself in it, because I've had projects that I can bang out in weeks and projects that you think are going to take weeks and take years. So,
right. Okay, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled. Are there any shows that we should know about that are coming up?
On Thursday, this coming Thursday, December 8th, we'll be playing at Ice House on Nicollet in South Minneapolis. We'll be playing with our pals Apocalypse Girlfriend and Full Catholic. And it's our last show of the year, kind of a celebration of the end of this cycle for us and the beginning of whatever's next. And I've curated this show as a pretty purposeful showcase for us and these other 2 bands, who I think they're like my 2 favorite local bands right now. Just like phenomenal songwriting, phenomenal performance, and this show at Ice House on December 8th is going to be a really swell time.
Okay, awesome. Noted. Do you have any other last thoughts, wishes, dreams, inspirations, words of advice you would like to share with our Radio K listeners?
Solidarity with the railroad workers. I hope you strike, even if labor leadership and political leadership says you can't.
Solid. All right. This is the end of our conversation. This is I'm Kat. This is Gabe. You listened to Off the Record with Radio K, Real College Radio. Thanks for tuning in.